All right, everyone. I'm excited about this podcast. I haven't done one just for pastors in a while, so I'm excited about this one. I've been here in the studio putting my books on Audible. So if you ever have any members, Feasting and Fasting, Help, I'm Addicted, those struggling with addiction, every type of addiction, weight loss, putting my books as free downloads at the church website, westsidechristianfellowship.org, westsidechristianfellowship.org, free downloads there to help people in these areas. So what I'm going to do here is talk about an important topic, and I've got some notes I'll be looking at. The title is A Hard Calling, Staying Healthy in Ministry, a hard calling, staying healthy in ministry. Of course, we can touch on a lot of different things like overcoming depression in ministry. And the reason it's a hard calling is, this is again directed mainly towards pastors and Christian leaders. Of course, a lot of you can benefit from it as well, is because it's one in which we are called to lead God's people. And if you don't know yet, but you will find out soon enough that we do not do this perfectly. We are fallen people just like the people we lead. And if we're not careful, we can beat ourselves up. We can really, get isolated and get down. And so it's good to just remind ourselves that we are called of God. We are not perfect, but we want to get back up and keep fighting. But the reason it's also hard is our kids as well. We live in a fish bubble. I should say a fish. We live in a bubble, but like in a fish tank, right? Everybody can look in and see you. Anytime your kids mess up, people are extra hard, extra judgmental. They can really, say some mean and nasty things. And people you thought were friends can stab you in the back. The list is endless. So it's a very hard calling because in the midst of that, I can't act like they act, although I would like to. The old Shane comes out and, hey, I want to go after you just like you go after me. And we can't. We've got to hold our peace, hold our tongue. And so it's very challenging. But there are ways to stay healthy in the ministry. I want to share those with you. I think now, I've been in ministry about 22 years or so. 23 years, planted the church 14 years ago, but was traveling speaking before then. I've led a large group of people in the past in corporate America. But a couple things that even for pastors, this applies to all areas, of course. Number one, what you need to be careful of is overextending yourself. We need to rest. Sabbath day is a great principle. There should be a day where your phone is off, you're disconnected, you don't need to go on social media. People know you're off. You have somebody, that can help you. And then you take those times off, a week here and there. Maybe request a sabbatical after 5 years. That was a blessing to me when I did that in 2021. Ready for another one shortly, but fortunately I can take some time in August, off of the ministry and just, revamp everything in my soul, and really get that rest just to unwind. And also your daily devotional time with the Lord. I know we know it, but do we do it? And that's where you're going to succeed or fail. It's usually in that time, morning time. Maybe you're an evening person. I don't know. I know early will I seek him. Many verses on the freshness of the day. Ian Bounds on prayer talks about giving God the clearest hours of the morning. And so that strengthens you. Not overextending yourself strengthens you. You have to figure out what drains you and what builds you, and focus on that. For example, some pastors, they really enjoy counseling and it builds them up. Other people, it really drains them. I mean, obviously they have to do it, but that drains them, and maybe they need to go take a walk afterwards. That really builds them. Or listening to worship music and turning everything off. That really builds them. So you have to focus on things that build you up, not tear you down. Getting rest and sleep. And this is where I want to tie in something that you're not going to hear in seminary. You're not going to hear it from a lot of pastors. And I've been getting a lot of good feedback on this topic. And it's on this topic of health and fitness. So a lot of you can download this book, for free, westsidechristianfellowship.org, books on revival, books, all types of books there to help you. But we've got to remember that our physical body, although it's not as important, this is how we do ministry. So if I don't get enough sleep for a while, I'm not eating good. I've got the chemicals, the byproducts, the glyphosate from pesticides, tons of caffeine. Let me tell you, caffeine is not good for a lead past any type of leadership position because it's a central nervous stimulant. So basically, you're constantly high on this drug that keeps you amped up. And so, I know that's going to be hard because 99% of you watching love your coffee. Okay, well, enjoy a little bit in the morning. But watch, does it start to distract you from the word? Your attention span is not as good. You snap at your kids, you yell at your wife, you're mean to members, and it's huge. It's a huge issue that nobody wants to talk about and everyone wants to excuse. Well, it doesn't affect me that way. Well, okay, maybe not. I'm just saying though, check it out. It is a drug. It is a stimulant. So if it doesn't affect you, maybe you don't think it affects you because you haven't tried going off of it. And whenever I've went off, I just realized, man, I'm so calm. But again, might not affect you as deeply, but you can switch to green tea. You can just have a little bit of just in the morning. And again, make sure you're eating good throughout the day. Are you eating God-given food? I know we love to drive through our favorite coffee shop. We go out to eat with people a lot, and we can really eat a lot of things that aren't good for us. And when you're eating chemicals, additives, preservatives, food coloring, all these different things, guys, it makes you feel bad. You feel depressed. You feel lethargic. So I don't know why more people aren't talking about this because this is huge. This is huge. How we take care of our body affects how we minister. It affects if you don't believe me, try having a couple beers before you preach. Don't try it, but you know what I'm saying. Try having a Xanax before you preach. And I've done this before. When I first started ministry, I went to men's breakfasts. They would have me preach, and I'd have that big breakfast burrito, and man, I'm just like, by the time it's time for me to go up and speak, I want to take a nap. And so you realize that this is not just a slight recommendation. This is a call to really get your body in check. Even if you're not a pastor, what about if you're a father or a mother? You're leading your family, you're helping your family. How much better? Again, it doesn't mean we don't get depressed. It doesn't mean we don't go through challenges. It doesn't mean we'll never be sick. Actually, attacks of the enemy, our fallen nature, we could get sick even when we're doing all that we can do. But you want to put everything in your favor. You want to be ready to go in the morning, ready to go in the evening. You want to be taking care of this gift that God has given us. And here's the key. We know what we need to do. So we have the knowledge, but we're not applying the wisdom. Wisdom is applying what you know to be right. So we know that we need to be doing these things. Some of you'd feel so much better if you dropped 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds. And especially, just for me, I realized when I was up there preaching years ago, and even I was 240 pounds, which, 6'2", you can hold it well. But realizing, man, if I don't get this under control, and I hit 250, 260, it's an outward of reflection that shows my lack of discipline. Again, in my own personal life, I'm not coming against anybody. I'm a fellow struggler, but at some point in time, we need to get rid of the junk that is hurting us and our families. I'm just shocked when I see families like dads ordering these huge, sugary drinks at their favorite coffee shop that's got 60 teaspoons of sugar in it. They're giving it to their kids, they're giving it to themselves, and then they don't know why they're so anxious and why their kids and why they have family problems. A lot of times when you look at the dynamics of a family that is not healthy, yes, spiritually first. Look at that. Absolutely. But then look at what the family's consuming. We can get into the gut bacteria microbiome. We can get into brain-derived neurotropic factor in the brain. We can get into glucose and glucose sensitivity. But let me tell you, when you begin to eat God-given food, lose the weight, you're going to feel so much better. So that's my little rant on that. And then, like I said before, make sure you have time of worship and time for prayer. Get your heart right before God. And then from that, you start to, you'll be able to deal with things a lot better. For example, many pastors get frustrated when they focus on numbers. And it's how we were raised, I think. It's our American mentality. I came from corporate America. So trust me, numbers were everything. Same store growth, by, I think back then 5-6% was good. How many people are coming in? How many people are signing up? How many numbers? That's how you rated success. That's how you were judged. Character, numbers, yes. So we take that into and we look at, man, look at that person. If I could have, a mega church, let me tell you, mega churches bring mega devils. More numbers, more problems. New levels, new devils. You heard all that. And a lot of it's true. I don't know if we were created. I've got friends who, I pastor a large church. It hasn't crossed into the mega church status, yet. I don't know if it ever will. I want God to do it, because if he doesn't do it and we do it and we're all about numbers, it will fall apart. It's not healthy. And you can only effectively pastor so many people. And that's why now in the news, while I'm recording this in July 2024, it's just like every day, this mega church scandal, this mega church sex abuse, members are coming out. It's hard. It's like a big gathering, and you can't shepherd things well that are so big, unless you have, tons of leadership, of course, tons of elder qualified men. And a lot of things can go on because you're after the numbers. And when you're after numbers, you'll begin to compromise. You'll compromise who's serving in certain areas, children's ministry or ushering or greeting or worship, because you want the numbers. And you got to get back to faithfulness and say, Lord, if I lose some numbers, I don't care. I'm going to be faithful to you. And to me, faithfulness is the key. Most of the people I look up to are not pastoring mega churches. I would say the majority of people. And the biggest churches, I wouldn't say the biggest, but the majority of the churches in America, like 80%, have under 100 members. That's faithfully shepherding those who God has given us. Now, if God grows the ministry, the building's too small, he's doing it, but make sure your heart is right. If not, it's going to lead to depression because you're focusing on the numbers. And I want to say this, I was going to do a different podcast on it, but fruit cannot justify poor character or error. I see so many people saying, but look at the fruit. Look at the fruit. Okay, well, God can bring fruit wherever he wants. It doesn't mean what you're doing is correct. How many churches have good fruit, but it gets exposed later that there was sin in the camp, whether pastors, elder, leadership team, whoever. Oh, but look at the fruit. Or, I challenged somebody recently about they had women lead pastors on the stage at this event, and we don't agree with women leading men in the position of elder. Every other area is fine, but that leading that man, the pastor role, we think is reserved, biblically speaking, for the men. And so she said, but look at the fruit, Shane. I said, well, just because there's some fruit doesn't mean that we're not out of order. So I just hear this a lot. Somebody, maybe prophetic voices or things that they're doing in church that are not that great. Man, I don't know about that. I don't think that's good. I don't think it's biblical, but look at the fruit. Okay, how much more fruit would you have if you obey God in these areas? And so we justify poor decisions and poor choices because we see a little bit of fruit. For example, somebody, could be caught in some sin, preached on a Wednesday night, was caught in sin. And I've had testimonies of pastors, or not testimonies plural, but I had testimony of a pastor a while back on my podcast who was having an affair with this lady for years and preaching some of the best sermons he's ever preached. I'm like, how is that possible? He said, well, I was so broken over this that it came out in my preaching. But at some point, if a person's so broken, why is there no repentance, right? And I think there was repentance, but still caught in that. But he could easily have said, but look at the fruit. We had 10 salvations that night. We had people come, man, look at that fruit. No, God used you in spite of your lifestyle. So this point irks me because so many people excuse sin or bad doctrine and they say, look at the fruit. For example, I could go and name a lot of names right now. A lot of these big guys, big names you see on TV, they have their jets and now I'm not against a private jet. I know some ministries that need to have it. And I'm glad they have it. But for the most part, it's about the money. And they say, look at the fruit, man. We had, 1,000 people come, give their lives to Christ through our ministry, and look at these letters. And so they use that to justify bad fruit. Don't do that. Don't do that. That does not please God at all. So if I were to sum it up, especially for pastors, it's a hard calling. Staying healthy in ministry, first, you have to stay healthy spiritually. Okay? The time with the Lord, devotion, repentance, a clean heart, clean hands, accountability, transparency. We just had a situation. I won't go into a lot of details, but, I wound up, I was in an area, everyone had left and there was a female in a different area of the building. And it just happened because the event was over. I was getting some work done. I texted my wife and a couple other key guys, deacons, elders, and said, hey, here's the situation right now. I'm going to be here about another 30 minutes. Just want to give you guys a heads up. My wife was on other. They're like, okay, thank you. And so it just said transparency. Don't give me the devil a foothold. It doesn't mean that we are perfect. It means we are sinful and fallen, and we know we need the Lord's help and accountability and transparency. Because when you're accountable and transparent, sin grows in darkness. So there's nowhere to grow when you're open and transparent and know you don't want to destroy your ministry over a foolish choice. So spiritual health is first and foremost. Get that time with the Lord. Don't say you're too busy, because that's when people fall, they say, I was too busy. I was too busy for God. And they fall, because ministry should never take the place of intimacy. I'll say that again. Ministry should never take the place of intimacy. And then you got to get your health in check and start to feel better. I'm not a perfect example. I wish, I could do a little bit better, but I also want moderation and balance. I don't want to be so extreme that, I turn into a CrossFit guy and I drop all my, responsibilities at home and at the church and things I have to, do. But you have to do what you can do. So spiritually, physically, don't worry about numbers. And I didn't say this earlier, but this one's important too. Get used to the fact that people will leave. Okay? Get used to the fact people will leave. Don't let that depress you. It used to really get to me early on, because I thought, hey, we're building this church together. I had friends, family, and then, I don't like that your preaching's too hard, or I don't think kids should be in the service. I don't think kids should have their own ministry. I think they need to be in the service, the family integrated church, which is great points, of course. And we encourage kids to be in the service, but I have people leave for that reason. Others because they didn't become an elder quick enough. Maybe because I was kind of rough sometimes in my dialogue. And so, God, you're just learning. Other times people just, that, hey, God's moving us on. And you take all that personally, and that can really weigh you down. We've got stories of being stabbed in the back by friends, people I had lunch with, went on vacation with. And it's hard, very hard. Now, we have to take responsibility. Of course, we're not 100% innocent, but I would say the vast majority of people leaving and being disgruntled and offended were simply because of me just leading. There's nothing I could do about it. Even your lifestyle will convict people. So you can't let that get to you. I remember during, what are we at now? 2024, during COVID, it was a nightmare for many of us. Post-traumatic stress disorder, a form of that definitely entered in. You couldn't please everyone. It was and it was here in California, Southern California, Los Angeles County. It was like literally every week somebody was moving, good friends, elders, deacons. It's like, man, I was getting, so you got COVID, you've got everyone moving, it's like, man, we're going to shrink down to nothing. We're going to, financially, right? You start thinking of those things. My main concern was just these were friends. But then you're trying to run the church and you have, people leaving. I don't know if they're givers or not. That's not my job. And that shouldn't play a role whatsoever. If it is, make sure it doesn't in your heart, because that will definitely, sidetrack you. So people leaving, we estimate now probably about 300 people left in a few years. But God actually brought more people because we were one of the churches here in Southern California that did not close down. We went to a stadium. We stayed in our building, and we actually grew from it. We're about where we were before COVID. And then financially we grew, relationally we grew. So it was like, wow, God used this thing as a huge blessing, actually. But it was really getting to me when I would get, hey, Shane, we're moving to Idaho. We're moving to Tennessee. We're moving to Florida. We're moving to Texas. We're moving to Arizona. We're moving to Nevada. We're moving to South Carolina. We're moving to Wyoming. Let me see if I forgot anything here, right? And so it's like, man, because you think they're going to battle with you. So that was the main thing for me. These are solid believers. We're going into battle here in Southern California, but I understand, who knows if I had a different job and I could go work, somewhere else in a great environment. I probably would do that. I probably would do that. So I don't blame people. So, people leaving, you can feel overwhelmed. Don't overextend yourself. Say no, because be careful, don't give out your cell phone too much. Email, have somebody, helping regulate those things. It depends on the size of the church, depends on a lot of different things. Getting rest, a good diet, watch out for caffeine, try to minimize that if you can, because it definitely disrupts REM, the rapid eye movement, the deep sleep where our body actually heals and recovers and we wake up refreshed. You don't want to mess with that. Caffeine has a half-life. So you have it, 6 hours before you go to sleep. Half of it's, still in your body, a good portion before you go to sleep. And hey, I fall asleep just fine. Yeah, but you don't get deep sleep and your adrenals are exhausted. And so just take all these things into consideration. Mind, body, and soul. It is so important, especially for pastors. So thank you for following this podcast, this episode of Idleman Unplugged. You can obviously subscribe wherever you're at here, YouTube, Rumble. I think we're on 18 other platforms as far as the audio version of the podcast. Share it, get the word out there, because my goal is definitely to help pastors when I can.